I'll just tell you a quick story about that. Uh, Back when I was in my 40s, I spoke somewhere, and there was this guy in his 60s who was a fly fisherman, and
Mm,
been a big fly fisherman. So he and I started fishing together, and so we fished together not every year, but maybe every other year for 20 years,
wow.
which means that now he's 85,
Right.
and he had a stroke, and he's almost blind, and he has a fishing buddy he's been fishing with since they were in their 20s. So they've been fishing like 70 years together. I mean, like over 50 years, almost 60 years together.
Wow.
And and so I fished with the two of them a couple times, and oh, maybe five or six times. And last year, I was meeting them at this lake, and we had these little individual pontoon boats. They were already out in the lake when I got there. I get my boat getting set up, and one of the two, the one who's almost deaf but he sees well, he he rows into shore, runs across the shore, grabs me, gives me a big hug. This is a crusty old guy. He's an atheist,
Yeah.
he's not a, and then he
Yeah.
grabs me by the shoulders and says, Brian, stage four, return of prostate cancer, 10 to 12 months to live. I'm okay with it. I wanted to get that out of the way. I'm all right. I'm fine. Let's have a good time. If you want to talk to me about it later, that's fine. I can talk about it or not. It doesn't matter to me,
Oh,
but let's have a good time and go fishing. And I just thought, what a gift, what a,
I'm really interested if you grew up uh, around family that retired or worked 30 years at a job and anticipated it, and so it was in your sort of your background, like that's what we would do when I grow up or I get old, I retire,
yeah,
or not, and then or if you how you think about it, how you think do you think about that now and what it looks like?
yeah, it's a great question. So, my one grandfather was a missionary, and he was preaching and evangelizing and all the rest, and would never, in fact, he would disparage retirement, because we want to use, one of his sayings is only one life will soon be passed, only what's done for Christ will last. So it was like every day was a chance to do more for Christ, and you wouldn't
Keep
have,
talking. Keep talking. Go
and he
ahead.
wouldn't, have a chance to do more after he was dead. So, every day was filled with that sense of purpose. My other grandfather was a working class guy, worked in factories, and physically demanding work. And when he retired, it was like a great reward for hard work for all those years. Um, and he enjoyed his family and enjoyed his kids and grandkids. And, so he had this wonderful experience of retirement that I think came from that era where you work for, you know, he worked for auto company and you got a good pension and you worked really hard. And it was a very positive thing. My dad was a medical doctor. He loved being a doctor so much that he kept working as long as he could because he loved it and it was his identity. And I think he was quite depressed and very almost aimless when he left being a doctor. He didn't know it, but he was having early stages of dementia. So I think it was affecting his work in a negative way as a doctor, probably those last few years. But he loved his work so much, he stuck with it. So I have a little bit of all of those three, I think, you know, together in
So
me.
temperamentally, how do you see yourself regarding when you compare yourself to those three? Temperamentally, how do you see yourself?
Well, I'm probably the most like my grandfather who worked in a factory temperamentally, um, but I didn't have his job or financial security or pension, right? But I loved my work, so I feel like I'm probably like all of them in different ways, um, but this became a very live issue for me. I know you had a big health issue a year ago, and this year I've had a series of big health issues, um, and uh, one of the things I realized is I could keep doing what I'm doing until I fall down dead or have some health crisis that limits my ability, and I wouldn't have a chance to really slow down and enjoy my adult children, and really slow down and enjoy my grandchildren, and really slow down and hang out with Grace, um and also I think really slow down and enjoy some of the things I enjoy as a human being. So
For those who don't know, Grace is your wife's, that's her
yeah.
name, besides retiring with Grace. Go ahead.
Yes, I didn't mean grace in a theological construct there, right? Um, so all of those things for me, it all kind of comes together for me, and the practical decisions I'm making now are to only stay with the work that I really enjoy and feel is the most important. And
Mhm,
I am financially okay that I can, I'm getting Social Security. So I am financially okay that I don't have to keep working
mhm,
to pay my bills. Uh,
mhm.
and I think as long as I don't live to be too much over 90, I should be fine. And that's unlikely with my health history. So um, so I'm kind of excited about retirement and excited about continuing to work in the areas that I care about the most and try to make a positive difference in the ways that I can. I think I'm going to get a chance to try to balance those.
So talk to me about the work you're caring about and interested in right now, you're focusing in on.
Well, a huge part of my life has the last 25 plus years has been trying to help clergy and pastors. After being a clergy person, I've been trying to help church leaders. And I feel like I gave it my best shot, and I feel like whatever advice I gave, people did not find it appealing enough, or they found it impossible to implement, and things are not going well in that industry. I think they're going to go a whole lot worse before they get better, and so I have lost some of my energy for trying to help the institutional structures of churches um, to pull out of a nosedive. I think that the nosedive may turn into a crash or a sort of some sort of a safe landing, perhaps. But I think before something really great happens, I think things are going to have to get worse in that regard. So that doesn't feel like the best place for me to invest my energy. And maybe another way to say it is maybe younger people who, in a sense, have a starting point with things being worse will be in a better position to help people. I don't feel like I'm the best person to do that for the next
Keep
10
that
years
in
of my life.
mind with the idea of the choices we seem to make in life, either reforming a system from inside or from the outside. What's your observations about that, having dedicated a great deal of life to trying to reform the church institutionally from inside? Do you, I'm not asking if you regret that decision, but
Mm,
the calculating how we
yeah,
spend our time. What do you think of that whole approach now?
yeah. Well, I've obviously had to think about it uh, pretty deeply. Uh, And one of the things I think is that you either invest your time in institutions, either just preserving them if you think they're great, or trying to improve them if you think they need a lot of work. Um, you either invest your energy in institutions, or else you create new institutions, because anything that's going to outlast you is going to require institutions. Um,
Mhm.
so, uh, and I guess what I feel is I if in the time I've been alive, I don't think I could have started any institutions that would necessarily do better than the ones I've been trying to help.
Mhm.
Um, I just don't think the time has been ripe for that. So,
Brian, how much of a role does one of my questions for church institutionally is the role that money plays in it?
yeah,
Because I don't, when I read Now this is maybe not a fair argument, I'm sure, but when I read the Gospels, for example, it's very the money was not a big factor. It wasn't a thing that people
Mm,
were into. It certainly wasn't a profession. Uh, what if, what if being a pastor or being in what they call the ministry was more like being a musician, where the majority of musicians, my friends, never expect to make a living at it, right?
mm,
They have a day job, they have something else, but they identify among themselves as musicians.
mm,
That's sort of like I do this, I do that. So the inside talk, and everybody's accepted in that community and that status is,
mhm.
people are you're surprised to find out somebody's living on Social Security, retired, or somebody has a lot of money. That all kind of comes later, and is so. Why couldn't ministry be like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, music is a great example because there probably have always been some professional musicians who made a living doing
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
But most musicians were not professional. Um, and the same with sports. People have always played sports, but people who played sports weren't professional.
yeah,
Um, so, and you could say that the professionalization of music and the professionalization of sports has had positive and negative effects. Um, and and the industry could fail, but the reality of sports or music could continue through the people who do it not for money but for love. And of course, the word for someone who does something for love is amateur. Amar
right,
is the at the root there.
exactly.
So, but uh, so here's the catch 22. I think we're caught in. Um, for something to thrive as an amateur endeavor, it the word we have for that is a movement. It has to be a movement. For there to be, paid structures, structures that pay people, that's an institution.
Mhm.
And the problem is, I think we our basic understandings of Christianity are so tied to the institutions that we haven't let Christianity be free as a movement. Um,
Yeah,
and where it is free as a movement, it probably will be attacked by the institution because the institution wants sole proprietorship
right.
over the product, you know. So,
I'm going to switch gears here because I want to talk to you about aging. When did you, and you can, this is different for each of us. So, when did you, what's the question I want to ask? When did you start to think about your age as
mm,
being a factor either culturally or professionally or physically?
mm. Well, I think maybe three. I mean, one event that was a big deal for me, I was about 55 and I was 54 and I um, almost died. I had I love the outdoors. I got a tick bite, and that tick was infected with two different diseases. And it wasn't the typical Lyme disease. It was two other diseases, Ehrlichia and Bartonella. Very easy to treat, hard to diagnose. And so when I was rushed to the hospital, I was having liver failure, and a guy is pushing me down the hall of the hospital in a gurney to get a CAT scan, and he's literally running, and I say something must be going on. He says, "Yeah, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but you don't have any magnesium. Like we can't believe your heart's still beating because your magnesium count is so low." And so then I'm waiting in the hallway while he gets the machine ready, and I'm just thinking that sounds really serious. No magnesium, you know. And my, as I said, my dad was a doctor, so I knew what happens when you don't. These are called electrolytes, and when you're
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
so I realized my heart could stop beating at any second, and I just had this amazing feeling. Uh, I'm not afraid to die. If this is it, I'm. It's okay. I'm ready to go. I've had a
Right,
good life. Um,
right.
then they eventually they found out what it was, and I got treated. I came out of that with a severe heart arrhythmia that I thought I was going to live with for the rest of my life. I only lived with it for maybe 4 or 5 years, and it gradually my heartbeat went back to normal. But
Mm,
during those years, I felt very frail. Like I could feel my heart
mm,
arrhythmia being crazy, lots of skipped heartbeats and stuff like that. That probably was the second thing that really got me. And then earlier this year, I had a series of uh, tests and so on that just told me I'm at a high risk. Heart disease is the major cause of death in the world,
mm.
and I'm at a high risk for a number of heart disease. And so, yeah, I feel like I I don't think. I mean, I have all the issues people deal with. My hip isn't right, and all that sort of stuff. You get older, but um, I feel like uh, I guess the only other thing I should bring up about aging is that both of my parents had dementia in different forms,
Mm,
and I remember my
mm,
mother saying to me when her dementia was really quite bad, and she had a kind of dementia where she knew she had dementia and
mm.
knew she couldn't remember things, um, and she could feel her memories just going away. And she said to me, "I think there are worse things than dying." and
That's what something that's just something my wife says frequently. Yeah, that's funny.
So, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. So I'm certainly not afraid of dying, and I know I don't have that much control over aging, but yeah. So
What did you, how old? I I follow people that have musicians, primarily artists that have aged, because there's something funny about musicians is they can keep playing into old age,
yes, yes,
probably because they have to, right? A lot of these people do
yes.
because of they've indebted themselves or others or whatever they need it,
But
and
also they love it. Why
they love it
why
too.
would you want to do anything else, right?
Like BB King, he should have been
Right.
on stage like way earlier. Willie Nelson, right? These people. So a guy that I followed is not a musician, but Norman Lear, who I think I told you this story before. But anyway, had a brief contact with him in the mid '80s. But he ended up. I talked to him when he was 85 or 86, and that was much younger at my time, my life. And I thought this is the last conversation he's going to have. Well, he ended up signing at 98 a contract with Sony to do produce a show for 2 years, and he fulfilled that contract. Right?
God
Yeah.
bless them. Wow, amazing.
Do you follow people like that inspire you, or you think, well, I realize it's just inspiration, but do you track people as they age in that way, or you wonder, well, maybe I could do like that?
I pay attention. Yeah, I pay attention to people who are older than me and think I want to be like that when I
Like
grow
who is
up.
there anybody that you have in
Oh,
mind? Okay.
well, so many. I have to say that some of them have died recently.
Okay, exactly. Do you go like, is anybody ever leaving?
But yeah, and yeah, and in different areas. We were talking earlier. I love fly fishing. I have friends who I admire that they're out there in the river, in their 80s, and I think to myself, I hope I will be well enough to be able to do that too. Or musicians, because like you, I love music and I write music,
Right,
and writers and yeah.
right.
Um, Well, as I said a minute ago, I had this experience where I had reason to believe I was very close to death when I was in my mid 50s. And I remember thinking, if the, like, I'm not afraid. And for me, it wasn't even the thought of, oh, I'll be in heaven. It was just the thought that I've lived my life. I've had a great life. I feel nothing but gratitude. I don't feel I have unfinished business. I don't have anything to prove. If I had small children or something, it'd be different because I'd be thinking they need me, but my kids are growing up and doing fine. So I just had this sense of lightness and peace about it. Um, and uh, and of course, I have no guarantee that I'll actually feel that way when the time comes. But I hope I will. Um, I it was interesting with my father. He was a very devout Christian and always singing about heaven. He grew up in a form of Christianity where celebrating heaven is such an important thing. And what I realized about my dad is he wasn't afraid of being dead, but he was totally unprepared for the process of dying. That was exacerbated by him being a doctor. Like he prepared in the sense that he had all of his financial ducks in a row and, he'd gotten
Mhm.
life insurance and all that. But the thought of getting from being a healthy, older senior citizen to being dead, he just was unprepared for it. And
Okay. Tell me a little more about what you're observing that indicated that.
well, I mean, the poor guy, he had something called an aortal aneurysm, like a big balloon in his aorta, which,
Hmm.
and he was a doctor. He knew it was very serious. And he finally, it got bad enough that they did surgery. And he came out of the surgery, and I forget how many more years he had after that. But then he had a really serious thing happen. And I remember I took him to the doctor, and the doctor said, and he said to the doctor, "Well, doc, of course, this is a doctor talking to the doctor. Well, doc, can you get me 10 more years?" And at the time, I think he was about 84. And and the doctor just, you could tell this doctor understood a fellow doctor. The doctor says to him, "No." That was it. Like, uh, because I think there was this idea in medicine, you can always fix things. You can make everything be fixed.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I think that doctor was trying to do him a favor, but it didn't go in because in his mind everything could be fixed. Everything, virtually everything, was fixable.
Mm.
And I just think for whatever reason, it I think it's almost as if his belief in heaven made him think I don't really have to think about between here and there, which is the dying process, which involves either a sudden death or a
Right.
gradual death. Uh,
Right.
and there are advantages and disadvantages to both. I think of another friend who died in his 80s, another devout Christian, and to the very end he was sending out emails, pray for my healing. I still believe it's possible that God could heal me. And I thought, and then he died. And I thought, because you have been so obsessed with healing, you never said goodbye to anybody. You never said a blessing to everybody. You and I'm not criticizing him. I feel sorry for him. I wish his faith had told him there's a time to die. If you're in your 80s, it could be any day. And
Right.
and I wish he would have thought, I'm it looks like I'm going to die. I should call some people and tell them they mean something to me. I should call some people and thank them. Um, but it was death was nothing but an enemy, and the enemy had to be fought at all costs. And again, there are theological roots to that. But and again, I want to make it clear, I'm not judging him, but I felt
Right.
sorry for him, and I felt that he was not well treated by his his religious background.
When my mom was dying, we were taking care of her, and she asked my wife Barbara to bring her Rolodex, and then and then we overheard her in the other room leaving voicemails. Well, this is Jackie. I'm leaving the planet soon. And I just want to tell you how much I loved you and thank you. She left a series of voicemails. I'm
Wow.
hearing this from the other room, thinking, "What am I going to do about this?" Like
Yeah.
this is embarrassing. And what is she doing? Well, she ended up dying fairly shortly after that. So that's our mom. Two more questions. Healing. When have you either prayed for it and seen it work, in your opinion? Work is a subjective term. And also, when have you prayed and it didn't work?
Yeah.
And it
I
mattered,
would
and it mattered to you.
Well, I would say this was like one of the sore spots of my life as a pastor because people would come to me and ask me to pray. And what I felt on the inside is, shoot, my track record is so bad. You probably don't want me praying for you. I wish I would have had the humor and courage to say that to them, but I also knew they were in need. And so I would pray for them to try to help them. But if I were judging, making judgments based on the efficacy of my prayers for healing for people. it would be not a good not a good track record.
Did you ever have a time when something appeared to work that you connected to you praying or a group of people praying for a physical healing?
I I had many people tell me, thank me for praying for me because I whatever we prayed for happened. But
Okay.
what I would be
What were you
thinking
think- what were you thinking?
in my mind, what I was thinking is, well, I'm so glad you're better. But I'm remembering the 75 other people who nothing happened when we prayed and things just got worse. And so, I'm glad you're better. This does not help me.
Isn't it a weird job that to have? Think of this as a pastor. People come to you and ask you something like, "Pray for healing for my child." I mean, who else gets requested
Yeah,
these odd, unusual,
yeah,
undo these requests? It's just this is what gives me empathy, and for pastors, it's years ago I read this term intrapsychic pressure that pastors go through. It's this
yes.
repeating series of things. So, yeah,
Yes, I'll just tell you a quick anecdote about this, and I don't want to give any details here to protect people, but I remember a couple in my church had a horrible loss in their family, and I walked with them through the loss. And then over the following weeks, they started, and I'm not criticizing them at all. I, I mean, in one way, this was a wonderful thing for them, but they went back and felt like they saw signs over the previous year that God had been preparing them to get ready for this horrible loss.
right, right.
And um, and when they told me this, I knew that they wanted me to affirm what was meaningful to them, which I did my very best to do. But what I was also thinking is, I actually don't believe that's how things work. I don't think God has the future all mapped out and gives you
Right,
signs of things.
right.
I'm not sure what good it does. If you got the signs, what good it would do. What I really felt is those signs were their ways of saying that even though this horrible loss has happened, we aren't losing faith in the big realm of which we put our trust on. We're not losing faith in life. We're not losing faith in God. And this was their way of giving themselves permission to keep that faith in God, right? But I remember I tried to be honest with them and I said, listen, I want to tell you, I know this is really helping you right now. And maybe this will help you for the rest of your lives. If 6 months or a year from now come and this way that's really helping you, I can imagine ways it could turn around and really hurt you. And if that ever happens, feel free to talk to me about it. That was the way I could not interfere with what was helping them, but also try to be aware because of past experiences as a pastor to not let them get trapped by that thing. Yeah.
Brian, I carry you in my heart.
Thank
Thank
you, my
you.
friend.